When the fake rich girl returned to the country, I was already pregnant. At the last moment before having an abortion, I still softened my heart. I gave birth to the child and decided to start over with Louis. But Louis doesn't love me. And my son also prefers the elegant fake rich girl. I signed the divorce agreement and left. 3 years later, I was rescuing the wounded at the earthquake site. My son shook off Louis and threw himself at me, who was covered in dust, crying and calling out, "Mom." I dodged his hand and pointed to the fake rich girl with delicate makeup beside me and smiled. Wade called the wrong person. She is your mom. When Louis found me, I was sitting and eating instant noodles with a few girls. I had been busy in the disaster area all day, and only now had time to sit down and eat. At this moment, I was eating ravenswee without any image management. Just as I was about to drink the last sip of soup, I heard someone calling me, with a hint of uncertainty. "Willa?" I turned around and looked for a few seconds before recognizing him. I was also a bit uncertain. "Louis? Am I seeing things? How could Louis, the heir of the Goof family, appear here?" Somehow, after I called out this name, Louis's eyes instantly reddened. He clenched his fists tightly, as if wanting to come forward but hesitating for some reason. The figure shorter than him reacted even faster. It rushed over like a cannonball. With a thick, crying tone, "Mom." I was frozen in place by this mom, and was almost stunned. Him? Why would Louis bring him here? I didn't talk much with the colleagues who came this time and only knew them by sight. So very few people knew that I had been married before and had given birth to a child. The 8-year-old child in front of me is called Wade and is the child of Louis and me. When I was found by the Lin family, the fake rich girl Ivy had already gone abroad to study. More than 10 years of companionship made Father Lin and Mother Lin unable to their feelings for Ivy. When they carefully told me that they wanted to keep Ivy and raise her together with me and the Lin family, it seemed that I had no choice but to accept. But the Lin family had financial problems and needed to marry into the Goof family. Ivy refused to return home because of me. Louis also married me in a fit of pique. Louis changed from being indifferent to me to being gentle and considerate. I managed this marriage for 3 years. I had intended to live like this until Ivy returned. Louis, who had never touched alcohol, got drunk on that day. I supported him back to the room, but was tightly held by the wrist by him. This was a Louis I had never seen before. He was always calm and self-possessed in front of me. But at this moment he was full of decadence. Louis mistook me for someone else and his voice was hoarse as he asked me, "Ivy, if I regretted getting married 3 years ago, would you turn back for me?" That was the first time I had a fight with Louis. Louis just looked at me coldly, watching me go crazy and question. In the end, he only said one sentence. "Willa, don't compare with Ivy." I knew the half sentence he didn't finish. It was, "Willa, don't be overconfident." When I saw the video of Louis and Ivy skiing and playing together on Moments, the commentary was filled with different teasing and blessings from Louis's brothers. Louis really got back together with Ivy. Awesome. The former school beauty and school grass. I only have 2 words. Perfect match. When are you going to divorce that Perech? I'll give 200 yuan as a gift money. Louis was even too lazy to block me when he posted it. I liked Louis's moments. On the same day, I consulted a lawyer and proposed divorce to Louis. It wasn't until the physical examination report from a few days ago was belatedly received. I then found out that there was actually a life in my belly. Both the Lin family and the Goof family advised me to stay. After all, the child is innocent. Louis, who had been cold to me since Ivy returned, also softened his voice unprecedentedly. "Willa, why bother? Ivy and I are in the past. Now we are just friends. What are you fussing about when friends go out to play?" Louis took out our wedding ring and promised that he would never take it off. I hesitated. That night, I dreamed that a child was running towards me. Even though he was covered in mud from falling, he still tried hard to get close. The child stretched out his hands, begging me to hold him. crying almost to the point of fainting. He asked me, "Mom, don't you want me anymore? Why don't you want me?" At the last second before being pushed onto the operating table, I softened my heart and told the doctor that I didn't want to do it anymore. Since Lewis said that the past is in the past, then I will believe him. The arrival of a new life in my belly. I am willing to have a new start with him. Wade is the eldest grandson of the Goof family and has been loved by thousands since childhood. The elders of the Goof family love him and transferred Goof family shares to his name as soon as he was born. Lewis also loves him. He found the best teacher for him, and takes him with him all the time. Wade is sweet-tongued. Everyone who has seen him likes him, and is made to smile by him. Only me. Wade is never close to me. When Wade could write for the first time, he wrote his own name, and then Lewis's name. Watching my child grow up gradually, able to crawl, walk, talk and write, I was almost moved to tears. I gently encouraged him and said, "Wade is great." But the third name Wade wrote was Ivy. I was almost stunned in place. Wade smiled sweetly, looking very cunning and lovely. Dad said that Aunt Ivy's name and mine are both Chinese medicines, and they are very nice. Unlike Mom. Why are you called Willa? It's so rustic. I heard that only in the village would people be named Mayor Xiyuhua. It's so in a way. It doesn't sound like a family at all compared to me and Dad's names. I don't remember how I severely taught Wade not to laugh at other people's names that day. I only remembered that Wade cried loudly and attracted all the Goof family. Wade threw himself into Lewis's arms, crying so hard that he could hardly catch his breath. I don't want her to be my mom. She is fierce and dark. Unlike Aunt Ivy, who is fragrant and soft. After working in the countryside all year round, my hands are full of rough calluses. Although my skin is not very dark, compared to these pampered upper-class people, it is much rougher. Father Gu and Mother Gu quickly comforted their grandson and cast a reproachful look at me. "Xiao King is still young. Why are you so fierce to him? Can't you talk nicely? You don't look like a member of the Lin family at all." I raised my head and met Wade's eyes. There were no tears in his eyes anymore. He was looking at me smugly and smiling. I don't understand. How could the child I love with all my heart become like this? Lying, being mean, and taking pleasure in laughing at other people's names, even if this person is his mom. I learned about the kindergarten parent-teacher meeting later. I directly went to ask Lewis and questioned him why he let Ivy go instead of me to attend Wade's parent-teacher meeting. At that time, Lewis didn't even raise his eyes and just said indifferently, "You go? What talent do you have to show?" Parents can indeed freely show their talents at the kindergarten parent-teacher meeting. But I still don't understand. But I am his mom. Lewis put down his pen and looked directly at me. "Oh. So what?" Ivy won first place in the violin performance at the parent-teacher meeting. There was a hint of sarcasm on Lewis's lips, looking at my pale face with an appreciative look. Wade doesn't want an embarrassing mom. I signed the divorce agreement and left without looking back. When I left, I didn't take anything with me. I didn't even take a last look at Wade. I returned to the workplace and became a nurse again. After giving birth and taking care of the child these years, I actually found work a bit strange. Fortunately, the head nurse who had taken care of me before still remembered me, and was full of surprise when she saw me back. 3 years later, we volunteered to go to the disaster area to treat the wounded. In addition to treating the wounded, we also help move supplies and record information. Every minute in the disaster area is precious. There is no time to wash hair or take a bath. So at this moment, several people are covered in dust. I once took Wade back to the place where I grew up. After getting off the car, Wade kept clamoring to go home. He said it was too shabby here. I found the cleanest chair at home for him, but he didn't want to sit on it either. He didn't drink a sip of water all day. "Mom, your home is so dirty. I don't even dare to breathe." I don't know why. Compared to other hurtful words, I remember this sentence the most clearly. At this moment, I dodged Wade's figure as he threw himself at me. At the same time, A charming voice also sounded not far away. Wade. Don't hug people randomly. Aren't you afraid of getting dirty? I looked up. Ivy in front of me was still as fair, dazzling and beautiful. The young master of the Gu family and the young lady of the Lin family appeared in the disaster area together to donate supplies. Louis was wearing high-end custom-made clothes. Ivy was even wearing delicate high heels. When Wade saw that I dodged and didn't hug him, his eyes reddened again and he was about to cry. I pointed to the fake rich girl with delicate makeup beside me and smiled. Wade called the wrong person. She is your mom. Louis and his group stayed in the disaster area. I was too lazy to think about why they didn't leave after delivering the supplies. That day, Wade cried very loudly. But Louis, who always doted on him, rarely didn't comfort him. When I was called away by the head nurse, I could still hear Ivy gently coaxing him and singing. Sure enough, soon Wade's crying subsided. I gave a sarcastic smile. Sure enough, he still likes his and Ivy. Shaking my head, I threw myself into the busy work. In the evening, when I was checking on the wounded, a small head peeked in. Mom. Wade called me softly. I glanced back at him and continued to be busy with my work. Rarely. This time, the usually spoiled Wade was very sensible and sat obediently at the door waiting for me. After I walked out of the tent, Wade pulled my sleeve. Mom. I'm hungry. My footsteps stopped. After all, I couldn't bear to leave a child here. I took Wade back to my tent and asked him without looking back. Tomato flavor or braised flavor? Wade didn't speak. So I made him a bowl of instant noodles with tomato flavor. Putting it on the table, Wade ate quietly. Suddenly, his eyes red and halfway through. Mom, you never let me eat instant noodles before. My adoptive parents died when I was 10. I grew up struggling on my own. After returning to the Lin family, my biological parents also favored Ivy more. They were guilty and careful towards me, seeming polite and distant. So I didn't want my child to lack parental love. I took care of Wade's diet all by myself. I pulled out all the lilies I liked in the backyard and planted the fruits and vegetables he liked. I was always afraid that there were additives in the noodles sold outside. So I planted wheat myself. Every year, I ground the flour, watched videos, and made various kinds of pasta little by little. So, instant noodles were something that would never appear in front of Wade. It's already good to have instant noodles to eat. Many people may not be able to eat them even if they want to. Don't be picky. If you can't stay, let your dad take you back. I said this and continued to organize the materials without paying any more attention to Wade. Seeing my indifferent look, Wade seemed to know that his tears were useless. This time, he didn't cry. He just ate the instant noodles quietly. Xiao King, why are you here? You worried me to death. I've been looking for you for a long time. Suddenly, there was movement outside the tent. Ivy walked in hurriedly in high heels. Seeing the instant noodles in front of Wade, Ivy directly overturned it without thinking. Xiao King, are you hungry? Auntie has chocolates and biscuits. Come back with Auntie and I'll give them to you. After that bowl of instant noodles was overturned, it fell on the ground. The juice splashed everywhere, making a mess. I didn't mean it. Ivy was stunned for a moment, but didn't take it seriously. It's just a bowl of instant noodles. If it spilled, it spilled. In the disaster area, supplies are scarce. This pack of instant noodles was left by me because I didn't eat it in the afternoon. I said coldly. Ivy, wasting food and dirtying the tent. Apologize. Ivy pretended to be pitiful and looked weak. I didn't mean it. Is it necessary to be so aggressive? This is the same trick again. Ever since I returned to the Lin family, Ivy, who has always been arrogant, seems to have changed. She has become considerate, weak, and cry easily. Under her manipulation, my reputation for bullying my sister and being domineering quickly spread. She has been learning dancing since she was young and uses high-end skincare products. Compared to me, A country bumpkin who just came back from the countryside. She looks even more pitiful. I once wondered if my biological parents couldn't see through her tricks and schemes and were deceived. Until I heard Lewis's conversation with his brother. I know that Ivy was deliberately bumped into by Willa. But so what? Ivy has been pampered since childhood. It doesn't matter if she is a bit delicate. Willa should give in to her. Give in. Give in. The words I hear the most after returning to the Lynn family are give in. Give in. Okay. Then I'll give in. Lewis is given to you. And Wade is also given to you. I don't want to have a pointless argument with Ivy anymore. I got up and left, preparing to spend the night with my colleagues. Mom. Wade suddenly called me. Standing there. He was small. Looking up at Ivy. He said, "Aunt Ivy, it's your fault. Apologize to Mom." Ivy was stunned and a little confused. Me? Apologize to her? There was also some disbelief in her tone. The three of them were in a stalemate. Wade ran to my side and tried hard to reach for my hand. Mom. Don't be angry. It's my fault. I shouldn't have said I was hungry. I didn't move at all. Wade's voice slowly began to sound like he was about to cry. Mom. 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 He didn't know what to say. So he just kept calling me, Mom. Tears dropped quickly and soon made a small pond. Ivy's face was not good as she came to pull him. Wade ignored her and dodged and struggled. During the struggle, Wade was accidentally pushed onto the table by Ivy. The sound of the impact made people's teeth ache. Ivy was stunned and was about to look at Wade's arm. But at this moment, Wade burst into loud cries. Go away. Go away. I don't want you. I want Mom. I could no longer remain calm. I took the broom behind the door and directly hit Ivy's arm with it. Get out. You can even lay your hands on a child. Ivy was beaten by me and left in a mess. Holding her head. She even lost one of her high heels and ran away. I held Wade in my arms and carefully looked at the place on his arm where he was hit. Does it hurt? Wade's eyes were red. He leaned his head on my shoulder affectionately. Mom. You finally hold me. Children's skin is tender. Soon there was a bruise. But fortunately, no bones were injured. I applied medicine and bandaged Wade. His nose was red. But he didn't make a sound. I suspected that he was enduring the pain and looked at him several times. Wade sensed my gaze and said softly, Mom. I am very good. Don't drive me away. After a day of commotion, the child's energy was also exhausted. Wade soon fell asleep. Before falling asleep, Wade couldn't help crying and asked vaguely, Mom. Mom. After you left, did you miss me? Even a little bit? You don't want Dad. Why didn't you take me with you when you left? At this moment, I suddenly realized. For my leaving, Wade has resentment. Until lying in bed in the middle of the night, my mind was still echoing with Wade's accusation. He asked me if I missed him, accusing me of neglecting him and doubting my love for him. But how could I not miss him? He is the child born to my favorite Lewis. When I was 5 months pregnant, the fetal condition was unstable. I don't know how many miscarriage prevention injections I had. Those needles were so thick and long, one after another as if there was no end. Just after leaving the Gu family, I cried every day and couldn't sleep every day. I was afraid that the Gu family wouldn't take good care of him. I was afraid that after Lewis married Ivy and had a new child, he would no longer pay attention to him. When I signed the divorce agreement, I didn't want anything. I left everything to Wade and only asked the Gu family to treat him well. I once secretly went to the Gu family to see him. Hiding in a corner in the dark, Wade was playing with building blocks in the yard. When he got up, he fell and soon cried loudly. The nanny who used to be by his side all the time didn't appear for a long time, leaving the child crying. I was extremely angry and almost couldn't help but come out and take Wade away. Lewis. Since you keep Wade, why don't you treat him well? If I had known you were like this, I would have taken Wade with me no matter what when getting divorced. But soon, There were hurried footsteps. Lewis nervously picked up Wade. Ivy held a toy and gently coaxed Wade. The child soon stopped crying and laughed and shouted for an Ivy to hold him. I hid my palm that was bleeding from being pinched and left the Goof family silently. I asked myself in my heart, does Wade lack this love from me? Perhaps not. But I lack it. I lack a love. So I decided to love myself. The next day, I brought Wade to Lewis. Take good care of him. Don't let him run around. Lewis took Wade's hand and said in a low voice, he insisted on coming to find you. I couldn't stop him. Then he can't run around either. There are people coming and going here. There may still be aftershocks. It's very dangerous. I know. I will take good care of him. After a few words. There was nothing more to say between me and Lewis. Once lovers who were extremely close. Now there is only silence between the two. Are you tired here? Do you want me to help you? Lewis was obviously trying hard to find a topic. But I had already turned around, and was in a hurry to go to work. So I casually pointed to the side. If you are free, go and help move supplies. When I took a break in the afternoon and walked out of the tent, I was surprised to see the person in front of me. In my impression, Lewis is cold and refined. Always an elite look high above. At this moment, his suit jacket was taken off and tied around his waist. His carefully styled hair was also messy. He and Wade, one big and one small, huddled together in a dusty way and shared a box of instant noodles. When they saw me come out, they both looked up at the same time, just like two stray dogs. Willa. Lewis called me. Wade had already rushed into my arms like a little cannonball and shouted Mom. Before I could speak, Ivy suddenly appeared. She was wearing a white dress, and wearing delicate makeup. She was completely out of place with the whole environment. Brother Lewis. Why are you here and doing these things? Ivy ran over anxiously, and was about to use a tissue to wipe Lewis's sweat. Lewis dodged and subconsciously looked up at me. But at this moment, I didn't have any attention to give him. I looked up at the person behind him, and was a little surprised. Hey! You can stand up. Behind Lewis was a very tall man wearing camouflage clothes and leaning on a branch. Isaiah looked at me and smiled. After I ran over, he turned around and walked twice for me to see. I'm mostly recovered. Willa. You have really worked hard during this time. I was afraid that Isaiah was pretending. I carefully touched the wound on his leg. Seeing that his expression didn't change, I was relieved and also smiled. Just when the two of us were chatting, a small figure suddenly rushed out. Without warning, he pushed Isaiah away. Wade stared angrily at Isaiah. At this moment, Lewis's voice also came from behind me. Willa. Who is he? Lewis's tone was a bit difficult. Is he your boyfriend? Isaiah is someone I met in the hospital a year ago. At that time, he was with a child. The child had a high fever and he paced back and forth anxiously. I happened to be on night duty making rounds. So I comforted him. After getting familiar with Isaiah, I learned that he is actually a soldier. This child was rescued by him in a flood disaster. Now he has adopted him. Meeting him again on the front line of the disaster area this time is also fate. Especially since he injured his leg to save people again. I admire him even more and am very concerned about his injury. At this moment, listening to Lewis's words, I really can't help but feel disgusted with him. Lewis hasn't changed at all. He is high above and never considers how much trouble his words will cause others. I was too lazy to pay attention to him, and directly turned around and was about to pull Isaiah away. But at this moment, Wade next to me was not willing. He pulled on the corner of my clothes, and yelled at Isaiah. Get out. Stay away from my mom. Wade even ignored the etiquette he had learned since childhood and sat down on the ground. While kicking Isaiah with his feet, he shouted and held on to me, and wouldn't let go. Isaiah was obviously also very confused. Looking at Wade sitting on the ground, Willa. This is. Before he could finish speaking, a child also rushed out from behind him. As soon as he saw Wade, Waylon frowned and pushed Wade in happily. Bad guy. Who let you push my dad? The two children soon started fighting. You kicked me and I punched you. When the two were pulled apart, both children were injured and were glaring at each other unconvinced. Wade looked at me pitifully. Mom. Apologize. I interrupted his words and squatted down to look at Waylon's injury. Waylon obediently raised his face for me to see and softly called me Aunt Willa. Perhaps it's because I took care of Waylon when he had a high fever. Waylon is very attached to me. Because Wade is not close to me, I am completely helpless with children who are so attached and trusting to me. I couldn't help but soften my voice and carefully blew on his wound and asked if it hurt. Wade's eyes were red. Suddenly, he rushed over and punched Waylon in the face and yelled, "She is my mom." I shouted not to fight. Waylon quickly stopped obediently when he heard my words. But Wade still punched a few more times like crazy, cursing Waylon as a bad guy. I pulled Wade away and threw him into Lewis's arms. Take good care of your son. I really don't understand why Wade has become like this now. Rude, irritable, savage and unreasonable. Lewis suddenly raised his head. His eyes were red and his voice trembled. He is also your son. Why do you only care about other people's children and not him? Ivy also ran over quickly at this moment. She glared at me angrily and scolded me for being cold-blooded. The three of them all glared at me like this. It really seemed like a family. I suddenly wanted to laugh. I tried hard to curve my lips, but found that I couldn't at all. It was Wade who was unreasonable and pushed others first. He made the mistake first, I said tiredly. Lewis had already picked up Wade and turned around to look at me coldly. So what? If you don't favor your son, who else do you want to favor? So, as I said, the Gu family is unreasonable. Their hearts are biased. The person they love gets everything as their way of doing things. So even though they know it's Ivy's fault, Lewis will without hesitation let me give in to her. So clearly, the teacher taught Wade about politeness, equality, and friendship just the day before. He can still mock my name and appearance without any scruples. I closed my eyes. Clearly, I already knew it long ago. Why is there still a throbbing pain in my heart? Aunt Willa, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have fought back. If I didn't fight back, there wouldn't have been a fight. Waylon gently pulled my sleeve, his eyes full of guilt. He took out the lollipop that he had been reluctant to eat and put it in my palm. A child's apology is to years what they think is the most precious thing as compensation. I unwrapped the candy wrapper and stuffed it into Waylon's mouth. It's Aunt who should say sorry because Aunt has brought trouble to you. Lewis and Wade never came to look for me again. Instead, Ivy came several times and started accusing me for no reason. I was so annoyed that I chased her out with a broom. On the third day after the earthquake, there was a sudden aftershock. At that time, I was bandaging the wounded. I felt the vibration under my feet. Without hesitation, I immediately helped the girl on the bed and ran outside. At the moment the building collapsed, I pushed the girl out and I was crushed under the ruins. When I woke up again, I felt aches all over my body. I opened my eyes with difficulty. It was pitch black in front of me. I could vaguely hear faint sounds outside. In chaos, I didn't know how many people were injured in this aftershock. I felt very bad inside. I endured the pain and didn't know how long I waited. Finally, footsteps came. Lewis's voice shouted outside, Willa, Willa, where are you? When I opened my mouth, I found that my throat hurt so much due to lack of water that I couldn't make a sound at all. Not far from me, a weak voice came, Brother Lewis. It was Ivy's voice. The girl said, Willa is here. After such a long time. She must be in danger. It was Isaiah's anxious voice. But Ivy was calling me. Right here. Lewis hesitated. Her voice sounds like she can hold on for a while. But Willa has no response. Why don't you ask her? Lewis really asked. He asked Ivy if she was injured and could she hold on. Brother Lewis, I'm actually with Sister Willa. But she hasn't made a sound for a long time. I suspect she has had an accident. Ivy's tone was weak but very clear. She was lying. I wasn't with her at all. There was at least 10 meters between us. Ivy was afraid that Lewis would come to save me first. So she lied. I heard the sound of heavy objects being cleared coming from where Ivy was. I didn't know whether Lewis believed Ivy's words or simply wanted to save her. But I didn't care anymore. Finally, I couldn't hold on and passed out. 17 when I woke up again. There were two faces. One big and one small. In front of the window. When Isaiah saw that I was awake, he exclaimed in surprise. How are you? Are you feeling unwell? Do you want water? I was helped up. Waylon carefully picked up the cup with his small hand. Aunt Willa. Drink water. I drank 2 glasses of water before I felt that my dry throat was relieved. After Ivy said those words, Lewis believed her and dug like crazy with his hands. But Isaiah didn't believe it. The girl I rescued had a good memory and firmly said that I was here. So after 3 hours of clearing, I was finally rescued. At this time, I was on the verge of death due to blood loss. In half a moment more, I might lose my life. I looked at the bandages on Isaiah and Waylon's fingers. Especially Waylon. Such a small child didn't cry out in pain until now. I was very guilty. I'm sorry. Isaiah stopped my apology. He even made a joke with me. Saving the masses is everyone's responsibility every day. Waylon also quickly chimed in. Zhao also has responsibility. The 3 of us all laughed. Just when the atmosphere was just right, there was a commotion at the door. Lewis rushed in. At the moment he saw me, Lewis's expression relaxed and his knees gave way, and he fell to the ground. Fortunately. You are fine. You are fine. You are fine. Lewis's expression was crazy. Tears welled up in his eyes. He was almost unconsciously muttering to himself. He cried and laughed for a while. His face was wild. Waylon was so scared that he kept hiding in Isaiah's arms. You go out first. I'll talk to him, I said to Isaiah and Waylon. After they went out, Lewis crawled on his knees and staggered to me. His tone was full of surprise. Willa. I slapped Lewis on the face. My tone was very cold. Lewis. Don't be crazy. In my memory, Lewis was out of control like this only twice. The first time was on the night of our wedding. The century wedding of the Goof family, and the Lin family was being broadcast live by media all over the world. Lewis was very gentle to me all day. I was extremely flattered. I kept practicing in my heart what I would say and what expression I would make when Lewis came in later. I hoped to leave my most beautiful appearance tonight in Lewis's heart. But I waited for a long time. Until 3 o'clock in the morning. Lewis still didn't come back. The light in the study was on and there was a slight crack. I heard Lewis making a video call with Ivy. Ivy. Don't think that I can't live without you. I can marry whoever I want. Ivy's voice was very charming, and also very cold. Whatever you want. Lewis. Listen carefully. I won't want a man who has been married twice. Lewis also sneered. Even if I've been married 10 times, I still won't marry you. After hanging up the phone, Lewis suddenly threw his phone hard on the ground. Playing hard to get? A fake daughter of the Lin family is also playing hard to get with me? Lewis was mean with his words. But his eyes were so red that tears were about to fall. The second time was the night Ivy returned to the country. Lewis was extremely drunk. He mistook me for her and humbly begged me to turn back. At that time, I was sure that Lewis was not a good person. Neither for me or for Ivy. He was selfish, impulsive, and mean. On the surface, he loved Ivy. But in fact, he only cared about his own interests. People like Lewis, whoever he marries, will not live a good life. But before I decided to divorce, I found the existence of Wade. 19 for ordinary people. The meaning of a child may just be the continuation of descendants. But it's different for me. My adoptive parents have left. My biological parents don't love me. Louis, whom I married, is not a good person. Looking back on my life, I have no deep friends. I have always been alone. If I die, there will be no one to miss before I die. So, after this child who is connected by blood with me appeared, I hesitated. This is the only person in the world whom I can love unreservedly. Perhaps it is also the only person who will love me unreservedly. I softened. To give the child a complete home, I am willing to start over with Louis. But I bet wrong. Louis knelt on the ground. I saw his loss of control for the third time. Willa, I don't love Ivy anymore. It's just my pride in the past. In those 3 years, I have already fallen in love with you. You are kind and gentle. Completely opposite to me. So on the one hand, I reject your approach. But on the other hand, I am always attracted by you. After you left, I had no contact with Ivy. This was accidental. The Lin family had to send a representative to donate supplies. I didn't expect it to be her. Louis explained for a long time. But I remained expressionless and didn't speak. His body trembled, and weighed, as if grasping a life-saving straw. Louis hurriedly spoke. He also misses you very much. In the time just after you left, he cried and didn't want to go to school every day. The first thing he said when he woke up every morning was whether Mom had come back. You don't know. He planted lilies all over the backyard again. An 8-year-old child. One by one. His hands were worn out, but he didn't let others help. As Louis spoke, his eyes reddened and tears fell again. He begged, Willa, please have pity on me. If you don't want to see me, go see Wade. He came running on his own, clamoring to save Mom. His arms were full of scratches from digging. He tripped over a stone and is now unconscious. In his sleep, he keeps calling Mom and his throat is hoarse. My expressionless face finally showed a hint of fluctuation at this moment. I frowned. Didn't you find a doctor to see him? Seeing that I finally spoke, Louis quickly answered, I did. But the doctor said it's because the child has something on his mind. Seeing Mom will be fine. Louis looked at me carefully and pursed his lips. You don't have to move. I'll bring him over. When he talks in his sleep, you just answer. When Wade was brought over, he was sleeping very restlessly. Just as Louis said, he was also calling Mom in his sleep. I looked at this child in front of me who I once regarded as the whole meaning of my life. Wade was actually very clingy to me when he was little. When he was still innocent. Every time he saw me, his eyes were bright. No matter who from the Goof family tried to hold him, he didn't want them. He just wanted to stay with me. How could I not love him? In my life, I won't love anyone, but I won't not love my child. That's why when Wade shouted that he was ashamed of me later, I felt so bad. It doesn't matter who says anything about me in this world. Only you can't. Wade seemed to feel my presence. The sound of his sleep talking gradually became louder. With a start, Wade suddenly woke up. He saw me leaning on the bed. Wade's tears couldn't stop flowing. He still had a low fever. His cheeks were red. He struggled to jump down and throw himself at me. Mom, don't abandon me. Don't stop loving me. Wade cried so much that his throat was hoarse. Tears fell on my neck and made my skin start to burn. I will be obedient. I am very easy to raise. I can eat cabbage every day. I will plant vegetables for Mom. I can also plant flowers. I will plant whatever Mom likes. My body stiffened and I couldn't move for a long time. When Wade was about to cry so hard that he couldn't breathe, I finally hugged him back. I didn't abandon you. What does an 8-year-old child understand? The gossip of the Goof family. The ridicule of peers in kindergarten. When I was young, I was still ashamed when I met classmates because of my mother's shoes with exposed toes and didn't want to walk with her. When I grew up, I could freely say that I grew up in the village. When I was young, I cut pigweed and raised ducks. But what does an 8-year-old Wade understand? He only knows that he is pointed at because of his mom, the eldest grandson of the Gu family, who has always been spoiled. Seems to be shorter in front of his classmates because of this. I don't not love you either. But you need to apologize to mom. I said. The divorce agreement from 3 years ago didn't take effect because Louis didn't sign it. Now we are sitting together. Louis is like a statue. His throat is hoarse. If you can forgive Wade, why can't you forgive me? I shook my head. You are different from Wade. What's different? Louis asked. But when I didn't speak, he didn't ask anymore. Louis gave me half of the Gu family's property. I said I could do without it as long as I could take Wade away. But Louis shook his head. He said that the Gu family couldn't keep Wade. After going out, I made a call to the media. Ivy is Lin Eng's illegitimate daughter. Her mother is the nanny of the Lin family who resigned 3 years ago. After saying that, I hung up the phone directly. In fact, I had uncovered this secret long ago. Father Lin was afraid that the relationship between husband and wife would break down and didn't dare to tell it. The most pitiful person in the entire Lin family is Mother Lin. She is not good to me and gives all her love to Ivy. She has protected Ivy many times and allowed my reputation to be completely ruined, and I was targeted. But that weak trace of family affection also made me hesitate and not tell this secret. Mother Lin is in poor health. I'm afraid she can't bear it. I even thought it would be good if she was kept in the dark all her life. But this time, Ivy almost killed me, which made me determined. In the Lin family, Father Lin is a son-in-law. Mother Lin strongly controls the industry. Once the news spreads, Father Lin and Ivy will definitely be driven out of the Lin family in a panic. And Mother Lin has the right to know the truth. I returned to the city where I work with my property and Wade. At night, Wade held my arm and gently swayed it. Mom, do you like Waylon? Why do you ask? Do you hate him? I asked. Wade didn't speak. After a long time, he rubbed against me and got into my arms. I hate him. He took away Mom's love. I am no longer Mom's only child. I couldn't help but touch Wade's head. Nonsense. You will always be Mom's only child. Love cannot be taken away. Mom will always love you. Then will you be with Uncle Kin? Wade asked. I was a bit confused by the question, but I still carefully explained to him. Mom and Uncle Kin are friends. Not all male and female friends are lovers. Oh. Wade agreed. After a while, he leaned his head over again. Mom, if you like Waylon, I will try to accept him. Then Mom will have to people to protect her when they grow up. The hand I was using to touch his head paused. I never expected that Wade, who has always been very possessive, would say such words. Seeing that I didn't speak, Wade thought I was unhappy and said carefully, Mom, I'm sorry. I will never fight with Waylon again. I just want to make you happy. Mom, I want to change my name. Can I be called Lin Dong? Have the same surname as Mom. Lin. In the winter when Lila blooms. I looked at the little Wade in front of me and suddenly understood what Louis said. The Gu family can't keep Wade. Why? Because this child has the same perseverance in his blood as me. Wade doesn't need the position of the heir of the Gu family, nor power and status. An 8-year-old boy needs a lot of love. So for a lot of love, he instinctively learned to give in. Okay. Go to sleep. I coaxed Wade to sleep. When the room was quiet, I gently kissed his forehead. Mom will always love you without any preconditions.